to an episode of the Ol'Timers comic book show, where the hosts aren't old, despite my grey hair, but the comics most certainly are. As always, join me from across the big pond. It is the Professor.
Hey, Johnny. How are you?
Hey, how's
You're,
it going?
you're across the pond for me.
Yeah, well, across the ponds we may be, but still, here we are. We're here to talk about a very special year. It's a crazy year, in fact. There's lots of stuff happening in this year, I believe. We're talking about, it's quite apt as well if you think about it. We're talking about the grand old year of 1989.
Hey, what happened for you in 1989? Anything good?
This happened.
Hey.
There you go.
Yep.
The Batman movie came out.
Yes. I graduated from high school that year.
Whoa. Really?
Yeah. I did. To date, so, you know, the hosts are old, so.
Yeah. Yeah, I was the year before, so there you go. I left high school at 88. So,
well, close enough. Close enough for government work, yeah?
Yeah. It's all over but a few months, right? So yeah, Batman 89 came out, which is kind of fortuitous when we consider that The Flash is currently in the cinema with Keaton making his reappearance.
Yeah, that's that's appropriate to be talking about. But now was that the first that was the first superhero movie in a long time, yeah? That was since Superman, really, Superman 2.
Yeah, Superman 4.
Yeah, and we got a few like I can't even think of like what came out prior to that. But
I think Batman. I think Batman's probably the big one.
Yeah.
I think after that there was a plethora of the early 90s. There was things like The Mask, which is a time cop, which is also a Dark Horse thing. Men in Black.
Do you remember Darkman that had Liam Neeson in it?
Love that.
Was that a comic book property before it was a movie?
I don't think it was. I think it was like a wholly original thing. It's just so, was it not written by Sam Hamill or someone like that?
Something like that.
Yeah, someone who's written comic books before.
Yeah.
But, I love Darkman. Love Darkman. Comic book wise, we're not going to talk about it, but this book also was around in 89. There we go. The Uncanny X-Men 257.
Yeah, that was gonna be my pick this week before we decided to go in another direction. But that was like my idea for the pod was just pick a year and then pick our like favorite creative teams from that particular year and just have some fun with it. But yeah, 1989 was the year Jim Lee debuted on X-Men, and really kind of changed the game as far as I think 89, not necessarily just Jim Lee, but 1989 really was the year of the artist, don't you think? Like the year where these artists just came out from nowhere, and by specifically all the Image artists really, where we had McFarlane on Spider-Man starting in 89, we had Lee on X-Men, Liefeld on New Mutants. So it was an interesting time if you liked looking at that kind of art. We've talked before that I think a lot of that stuff doesn't really hold up, but Liefeld and McFarlane specifically, but I think Lee stands up, and so Mark Silvestri and some of the old Image guys that got their start at Marvel.
I think I agree with you on this one. I think I do think McFarlane is very much a stylistic artist, to the point where I think it's of its time. We say that a lot on this show.
Yeah,
I think he came along and he absolutely blew the socks off everybody, because it's like, whoa, look how good that is. Now it's a little bit passé. I don't mean that in a disrespectful way at all, in any shape, way, or form.
I mean, you can't, because McFarlane made $1 billion doing what he does. So hey,
and then created a toy empire on top of that.
There we go.
So, but definitely Liefeld has kind of dropped off a little bit, stylistically wise. I mean, he still gets a lot of work on covers for Marvel on the variants and stuff, but but Lee still does well. I think Silvestri has matured into such a great artist. Uh, I mean, he recently had the Batman Joker, the Deadly Duo, come out not so long ago. I think that was last year. I passed on it not because of his art, but primarily because I'm sick of Batman and Joker stories. So, it's like, dude's got a rogue gallery at DC. You know what I'm saying? He's got a rogue gallery. Let's have somebody else. Huh?
I like a good Batman Joker story, but
yeah,
they're kind of watered down now.
So I mean, '89. It was. I think '89. I think thanks to Batman, it was a great year to get into comics because Batman was driving people to the comic book store. You know, and you think about the types of books that you were buying. Dark Knight Returns hadn't been out that long. Lawyer Death and Death and Family hadn't been out that long. All these major things that were happening in the Batman mythos. Spider-Man was kind of just ticking along with McFarlane. X-Men was getting back to itself, I think, because they've gone through the Siege Perilous. And
they had just at '89 was the year that they did that, because that was that issue that you showed was the first appearance of the redone Psylocke.
Yeah.
So that was post Siege Perilous, and that was when they were catching up with all the revamped X-Men that had gone through that. So good stuff. And it was also, if you saw in the corner of that book, on the Acts of the Vengeance crossover. So the event books were really kind of coming hot and heavy there, and the Acts of Vengeance was really the first Avengers type event book, even though it did cross over into the X-Men and other books. But if you remember Acts of Vengeance, I loved that because it was the coalition of all the villains put together by Loki, and they kind of swapped up hero groups. So in that particular issue, you had the Mandarin facing off against, or not really facing off against any of the X-Men. He was just there for Psylocke. But you had Magneto showed up in West Coast Avengers. You had a bunch of different characters. I'm trying to even remember everybody that showed up.
Yeah, I'm not sure who Spider-Man took on back then. Can't remember.
Spider-Man ended up taking on the Absorbing Man and Titania, and a few. Yeah, there was a few others. Doctor Doom versus Daredevil over in Ultron. I think Daredevil took on a couple of weird villains that you never would expect. So it was interesting stuff.
I liked some of those Marvel events back in the day.
Because they were new, it was new to see Avengers getting a little bit of love in the crossover event type realm. So
let's not talk about Atlantis Attacks, though, right?
Which one? Atlantis Attacks.
Let's not
was that '89?
I don't know. That was the annuals, wasn't it? That was the annuals.
Yeah, that was around that annual time. Crossover, and you might have been. That might have been. That was when all the annuals had an ongoing event. So might have been an Evolutionary War.
Oh, I remember the Evolutionary War as well. Gwen Stacy came back. Mark Bagley's first work on Spider-Man.
Yep.
There you go.
Yep.
Cool. Right. So we're going to go and have a look at a few books from the mighty year of '89. And some of these are absolutely bonkers. Well, I say some of them. This one's absolutely bonkers. It is Excalibur 15. So this is Excalibur. So it's the UK mutant team. So it's written by Chris Claremont, art by Alan Davis. Who else would draw Captain Britain but Alan Davis back then, right? Paul Neary on inks, Tom Ostrowski and Mike Hassler on letters. Colors are by Glynis. I've got Glynis Oliver. Is that right? I think it might be.
Yep.
Cool. Excellent. So why did you go with Excalibur 15?
Well, we were talking about creative teams, and you really can't and we never talk Excalibur, so I wanted to kind of just touch on it. I thought that Alan Davis was doing something special over on Excalibur at this point in time, where if you had read Captain Britain, and I imagine if you were in England and a fan of Marvel, you were reading Captain Britain if you could, right? And Claremont and Davis on Captain Britain but prior to this. Not a lot of people that didn't read Captain Britain that read Excalibur. Nobody knew that all these characters had appeared before over in Captain Britain. So Gatecrasher's TechNet had appeared prior. You had Jamie Braddock in this issue. You had Doc Croc in this issue. All these characters had prior history over in Captain Britain. So I thought it was really interesting when I was reading these characters. Like, I didn't know. I had never read Captain Britain before. It actually made me go out and pick up the trade paperback that was available at the time to kind of catch up a little bit on it. And the Gatecrasher type story where they're dealing with Doc Croc and Jamie Braddock in this issue was kind of the story. It's the weirdness of Alan Davis's designs on the TechNet, I think, really made them visually unique and interesting and kind of fun. The story in this issue with the Cross-Time Caper, if you're used to read Excalibur, this was the longest storyline in history for this book, with just some weird stuff going on. And you see it 3 times in this issue where they just go and they're in some other dimension with in different costumes, and they don't really try to explain anything. It
just goes with it, goes with the flow.
You just have to go with the flow, just to kind of, and this kind of gives you an idea of the Excalibur at this point in time for several months was traveling into different dimensions where they were in different iterations, like you see in this page where they were all dressed up in circus cowboy western type things, and they even explain that in this reality Britain was the untamed wilderness and America was where everybody was. So I thought it was interesting, but they never really go back and explain anything.
No, that's exactly right. I mean, they've got the train, the cosmic train, they've got the dragon living in the train, the dragon is Lockheed, and all that sort of stuff, which we don't get in this issue. It's kind of built upon. You know what I'm going to say, especially on this page, don't you? Fishnets, baby! Woo!
Oh yeah, fishnets. Look at that. Doesn't matter that it's Nightcrawler.
And then of course we got sexy vamp Kitty coming up. Not so long. Where she is. Yeah. There you go. You know, you made an interesting point. Captain Britain, to a large people forget that Chris Claremont created Captain Britain predominantly because when Alan Moore took him over, he went like in a completely different direction, kind of political, socio-political at least, away from that superhero sort of like tradition of Marvel, I suppose. And it could get away with it because it's a UK book and nobody's reading it in the UK and stuff like that. In the UK, if you know book you're reading with any regularity, it's 2,000 AD. And plus, I don't think it was particularly well served. It went from Captain Britain Weekly to monthly. Then it became a backup story somewhere. It was like, it was a hard find.
Yeah.
But very much like people gainsay Stan Lee into the creation of Captain America, because it has nothing to do with him whatsoever. People forget that Alan Moore. People say Alan Moore, Captain Britain. They forget that Claremont actually created him. Back in the day. I used to love this book.
And you know, Chris Claremont doing on Captain Britain and Excalibur really kind of kept the idea of the multiverse. Did it years before anybody else was doing it. You know, he was kind of playing in the realm of the what if, but actually with the characters going to the different dimensions with Captain Britain and Saturnine and all that. You know, that stuff. Saturnine actually makes an appearance in this issue.
The Captain Britain call.
That's what I was bringing up, was that you know the different Captain Britons all over the place, and that was done a million years before. They're currently everybody is doing it now in Marvel. So
this is Alan Davis. Sorry,
I said it was good fun.
Definitely, this is Alan Davis at the peak of his powers.
Yes. And he actually leaves mid storyline. He leaves the book, doesn't he?
He does. I remember reading an article. And the reason why he left was the colouring. The colouring was distorting his lines. He said the colouring's not good enough. I can't work like this. And he left. And then Claremont leaves, and then Davis comes back as writer, as well as penciler. Introduced Ferron, who thinks he should have the power of the Phoenix. A new girlfriend for Nightcrawler.
Isn't that the Shi'ar woman?
Yeah, that's it. And it's just kind of, I'm not saying it loses its way a little bit, but you lose some of the zaniness that Claremont was putting into this book.
Well, Alan Davis expanded the cast, right? So he expanded the group of Excalibur to include a bunch of new creations that he comes up with. But I always loved, like I said, Gatecrashers TechNet. I loved Alan Davis's character designs, and he's one of those very distinctual artists that you can't mistake when you see it on the page.
Would you say that he's like something like a third generation Neil Adam?
Third or second?
Second or third? I don't know where would you put him, because you got in my head it kind of goes Neil Adams, Irv Novick, Jim Aparo, Alan Davis. That whole raft. Maybe some Don Newton in there as well.
Yeah.
Because he's got a big barrel chest for Cap, hasn't he?
He does. He does. I always kind of put Alan Davis on. You know, Neil Adams you have to bring up because he does kind of have that reminiscence of Neil Adams, but maybe like a George Perez as well. But
especially with the group shots, definitely.
Yeah. So
I always loved how he drew feet. This sounds really, really odd, but the girls are always wearing high heels that are like this high, and the heels like so. You're like, how are they doing that really? But just one of those things. It works. I love his work, and Excalibur is the prime example of his work.
Like you said, the peak of his powers was Excalibur. So
there is an Uncanny X-Men annual out there, which he does. I think I'm not sure if it might be 12 or 13, somewhere around that range. And he does a fantastic Wolverine. And of course, you've got Bloodlust, the Wolverine graphic, which again spot on. Height of his powers, man. Height of his powers.
Yep, and he just did the most recent Avengers War Against Time book that was his swan song, because I believe he retired at the end of that. Never say never, right? Never say never.
Yeah, never say never, but I kind of understand a little bit. I think recently some of his because artists have tropes the same way. Artists have tics the same way that writers have tics. And with it's like every Alan Davis character has that big chest, whether it's male or female, then the really smooth stomach with nothing else there. You're like,
Yeah.
What did we look at recently? The nail. We looked at the nail, didn't we? That was Alan Davis.
I believe so. Yes.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, that was one of 13's picks.
Yeah, cool. Spoke to 13th today. I asked him how things are going. He's like, yeah, he's okay. I asked if he liked the baseball. He said no, he didn't. So I take it the Yankees are losing. I don't know. I haven't looked at the baseball standings for a while. So
the Red Sox are mediocre this year too. So whatever.
So go Toronto. Woo! This is your year.
Football starts in a month, so hey.
Yeah. Come on, preseason. Come on, preseason. All right, second book. Here we go. Right. Okay. Before we get to this second book, a little bit of a warning on this one. This is suggested for mature readers. So if you're a younger person and you're going to come across this book, be mindful. It's some of its imagery is probably not for you. All right.
Yeah.
If you want to skip past the next 10 minutes to the advert and knock yourselves out when we come back, totally fine. If you want to watch it on the download without your parents watching, don't tell them I said that. All right. Okay. Cool. Right. Here we go. It is one of my choices. This book absolutely blew loads of people away. It's Catwoman #1 of 4. It's the Catwoman miniseries that serves to reintroduce Selena Kyle into the Batman mythos. Obviously, she'd been in year 1, which gets a run out here. But this is written by Mindy Newell, art by Joe Brozowski. I'm going with. I probably got that wrong. Michael Blair's on inks. Adrian Roy is on colours. And Augustin Raz, that's Augustin Raz, not Raz. Sorry, it's not related to the demon. Is on letters.
Well, those names fly against what's on the cover there. J.J. Birch and Michael Bear.
Where did I get? Well, I got this directly from the horse's mouth. Did I? Where did I get this from? Where did I get this information from?
I don't know.
I don't know. We'll have a look.
You got Minnie Newell is right as the writer.
Yeah, cool.
But J.J. Birch on pencils with Michael Bear on inks. Right? Dark colors.
Where did I get this from? To see. Right, okay.
Just giving credit where credit is due.
Yeah. Feel free. Just to go back a little bit. So Excalibur prices. We normally do prices. You can get number 15 for about a $5 in the UK off eBay. And 9.6 in the States on Go Collect normally sells for around $38. There you go. Crazy. Catwoman. Couldn't find this one on eBay.
Really?
Yeah. And Go Collect have a 9.2 at $42. So there we go.
Not bad.
Yeah.
For a relatively unknown creative team, too.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Adrian Roy, we know from colours. Michael Bear, yeah, it's the same guy on the cover. Where's the Bozowski come from? I'm gonna have to do some digging on that. I'm going to dig on that. So, whilst I'm digging on that, you take this away. What did you think of this book?
All right, so this is where I get to say, man, I hate you because I'd never read this book before. So I read the first issue, which is what we're covering here. I ended up having to read all four. Like I had to continue and read the rest of it because it sucked me in. And I mean, even though like I know, I mean, I've read Catwoman. I'd never read this This is basically Catwoman year one. And the story, I didn't see that it said suggested for mature readers, but when you start getting into it and you start reading the plot line and the prostitution angle and the abuse against women and all these heavy themes that are going through this book, it was like I couldn't put it down. Like I had to go, okay, I have to read the next issue now. And that's exactly what you want from this book. It's a 4-issue limited series, and then you have to get all four of them. Batman doesn't show up till issue 3. And
what an appearance he makes.
And yeah, and so just the whole idea of Selena Kyle, where where before she had just basically been the jewel thief and kind of one-dimensional, really she becomes the Catwoman that from the movies or from future DC books. But it was interesting. I liked the characters. I liked the relationship she had with her roommate that she had taken under her wing. I can't really remember the name. Holly. But Holly's like, they've kind of she's been around for a while, right?
Yep.
They keep her around. So for me, I thought this was great. I thought it was I had to look back to see who wrote it, which would surprise me because Mindy Newell, I mean, I've heard of Mindy Newell, but surprised me and it surprised me that there was a female writer at that time that was doing work like this. There's I guess maybe compare her to Ann Nesenti on Daredevil.
That's a shout. That is a shout.
But I had to look back and I was like, who wrote this? Was it like Chuck Dixon or something? Or I was like, that's how kind of like got the theme of it. But it was great. And you're showing there that Wildcat trains her. I didn't know that. I didn't know that. So good stuff. Yeah, I was like, what a pick from Johnny.
I know. What can I say? This book, I own this book. I own the miniseries. It's one of those books that when I saw it in a comic book market, it was going dead cheap. I was like, I'm going to get it. The year one stuff, I love year one. Year one's my favorite Batman story. Comic books have a tendency to go back and re-image origin stories.
Mm-hmm.
This one, I mean, Catwoman's recently had hers change again in the current continuity, but this one for me kind of sticks. This is the one you see her in year one. It's implied she's working as a prostitute. In year one, it's implied that she gets the costume to become the Catwoman. This is slightly different. You're absolutely right. The mature themes are in there. The violence towards women, the distrust of men, I find absolutely thick and throughout this whole book. And when I say thick, I mean it's really strong. And why would she? Why would she have? Why would she have trust? When towards the beginning of the book where Stan's wanting her to put on the costume or whatever, and he's like, she's like, "Oh, do you still love me?" He's like, "Yeah, I love you." And you're like, "That's not how relationships work, Selena." You know.
Yeah.
But then we find out later on that the cop put her in touch with Ted, who's Wildcat, as you correctly said. The art works. The art's that gritty style that DC were fantastic at doing.
Yep.
Throughout. I've checked. Here we go. So Joe Buzowski had an AKA as JJ Birch.
There we go.
There you go. So
we've seen that a lot, so that doesn't surprise me.
And I did write, it is Michael Bear, and I wrote Blair on my notes, so that's on me. But the logic of why she'd use the Catwoman costume works really well when she gets inspired by seeing Batman doing Batman's thing from year one. But the whole idea here that Ted's really getting her to fight within herself and be her, it's absolutely spot on. And the rest of the miniseries is fantastic. Yeah, absolutely. If you want to know what Catwoman's supposed to be like, read this. It's that simple.
I like how Ted plays on her hatred of men, really, and was just it really kind of pushed her to the edge to the point that I was like, is Ted gonna hit her? I was like,
that's what it takes. That's what it takes. But no, I think these are sort of, we talk about Marvel and DC and how, and quite rightly you said that at times DC books feel staid and quite old and quite gloomy, especially around that 70s to early 80s mark. I think DC,
pre-crisis.
Yes,
pre-crisis.
Yeah. I think DC from Dark Knight Returns on, changes its playing field, and you could argue that there's too much of it, because there's Watchmen, there's what's the one, The Cult, all those things, and they do lend themselves. This mature look does lend itself particularly well to Batman over, say, someone like Superman.
Yeah.
But I just think if you're going to do a mature book, then this is how you do it, and I think this is a credit to everybody involved. What a great book, and it's got thigh highs on the cover. What more could a guy want?
Well, you're right about that. It was a great cover.
Cool. Excellent. Right, time for one of our adverts before we get jiggy with the next couple of books. You know what? We haven't seen this one for a while. And you know what? Considering the next book that's coming up, I think it's quite apt that we play this one. So here it is. It's a No Prize Podcast. Podcast drops on the Tuesday before us. Yay! So hopefully you'll have seen that pod with this guy talking about the latest.
This guy's on it too.
Yeah, but I'm grumpy on that show. I'm Oscar the Grouch on that show.
Hey, gotta have a dissenting opinion.
Then what can I say when you dealt garbage? I'm not saying anything. All right, okay. So if you've watched the most recent pod, you'll have seen the Professor wax lyrical about a couple of characters, and it just so happens they're in this one as well. from 1989. It's Silver Surfer
Hey.
number 31. Let's see. So this is December 89. eBay. The prices are quite consistent on this one. On eBay, you can get it for anywhere between a fiver to $9.99. 9.6 on Gold Collect will only cost you $15.
Oh.
I think that's quite reasonable, really, for this. It's a double-sized issue, so you know.
For a special giant-sized issue that will be slabbed and not look. Yeah, it doesn't matter. So.
Well, the thing is, there's some stuff in this that we should get Lucas on. He'll tell us. But there's some stuff in this that could push this higher than that, I suppose, with the current TV shows and stuff going on. Written by, and I'll use the credits from the book, Stainless Steve Englehart. Don't know why he was stainless, but I don't know.
They always call him Stainless Steve.
Okay. Ron Lim is on art. Inks, Tom Christopher and Keith Williams. Ken Brozinak is on letters, and Tom Vincent is on colors. And this is, as you can see, the conclusion of a Kree-Skrull war. I say A, because how many times the other guys got to fight? Oh, it's crazy.
The colossal conclusion.
The colossal.
To the Kree-Skrull war.
There's not a lot of colossal listeners. So why did you go with this one?
Well, because we were talking about creative teams, and for me, for my 1989 brain, I didn't think there was a better creative team in comics at this point in time than Steve Englehart and Ron Lim on Silver Surfer. I thought Silver Surfer was my jam. I loved this book from beginning to end. Couldn't wait for each issue to come out. This was a nice big fat double-sized issue of the end of the Kree-Skrull War, which had been going on in the Silver Surfer book for almost a year, with all the different type side supporting characters that Englehart created for this run. I'm going to tell you why I liked this run of Silver Surfer more than I liked the Lee Buscema version of Silver Surfer. There's two reasons. One, he's off Earth. He's in space, which is where he's supposed to be. And B, they surround him with a good supporting cast, which they're interesting. And whether or not they're good guys or villains, there's a ton of them running around in this. It's very busy with a lot of different side plots going on, but here a lot of them get wrapped up. If you didn't know prior to reading this issue, Silver Surfer kind of fell squarely on the Skrull side of the war, and helped defeat the Kree. Even though they kind of came to an amicable truce, so neither side really lost face. The big thing on this, and I think that you're talking about, is that the Skrulls, who for a couple of years previously, Byrne had written in an annual that the Skrulls had lost their ability to change shape. Here they regain that ability going forward. So that was the big thing in this book.
So let me ask you a question. Why was the Surfer on the Skrull side then?
I
thought he was quite balanced.
He came in as kind of neutral. And then throughout this storyline, there was a villain that was on the Kree side, Captain Reptile, and I don't know if he was a dinosaur pirate, which was kind of fun, but he had a beef with Silver Surfer, and throughout that. What Captain Reptile did, it ended up with Silver Surfer joining the Skrulls to defeat Kree, because Reptile was dealing with the Kree. So, in this you have some Shalabal. They kind of their relationship kind of comes to an amicable end in this, which frees him up going forward to, and very shortly after this. Or maybe during this, what's this issue? So he had already been bouncing around between Shalabal, Mantis, and Nova, Galactus's herald, at the time. So this kind of frees him up and he doesn't have another relationship in this book for a long time. So,
Mm.
but it kind of wraps up a lot of that story. Everything the Kree Skrull War is done in this, and then the second half of this issue was where he confronts the Stranger, and it ends up having
Great
kind of
panel, that, by the way. Love that panel.
yeah. Oh yeah, great stuff. With the Living Tribunal, and ends up the Living Tribunal ends up imbuing him with a momentary godlike powers for him to kind of see his place in the universe.
Mm-hmm.
And so by the end of this issue, kind of wraps everything up in a neat little bow. And going forward, this is Englehart's, I believe, last issue on Silver Surfer.
Oh,
Wraps
right.
up the story. He wraps up all his storylines, and then frees up for within the next couple of months. You know who comes onto this book?
Is it Ron Mars?
It is Jim Starlin.
Oh, is it?
Brings back Thanos.
Oh, okay, cool.
So that it takes the book in an all new direction that it's on for the next couple of years with the Infinity Gauntlet. So that all starts after this issue. So
I should get that.
yeah, it's a great story. So, but that's also Ron Lim. Ron Lim on Silver Surfer. I just, whenever he was really young too doing this. He was like 18 or 19 drawing Silver Surfer for Marvel. So.
Oh, right. Okay, so I'll get my usual joke out of the way now. Hey, look, it's Mr. Miracle. Hey!
Hey! Red, green, and yellow.
Yeah, in space, no one can see your fashion faux pas.
I kind of always liked the Stranger, even though I never really knew his deal. Even though they do explain it in this book, but when he first appeared in the pages of X-Men, you never really knew what he did. Yeah. I was like, oh, he's this big alien type enigma, and he turns Magneto into a baby, and
When was that? Was that before '94 then, or
way before? Yeah. He did that to Magneto and Toad, right? When the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants.
I'm going to pick up on something you said, in that you prefer this version of Silver Surfer over the Lee and Buscema, and possibly even Kirby, I suppose, to an extent. Is that from the writing aspect, this Surfer's not as whiny as the last one.
No, because because a lot of the times where he's whining is because he's trapped on Earth, you know, and so when he's off of Earth, it takes away a lot of his angst. So, to me, his angst after this is just because he to save his homeworld, he had to become the Herald of Galactus. But even then, in the first couple of issues of this run, he kind of comes to a where he realizes he comes to an agreement with Galactus. So it's like, all right, so that frees him up to be in these storylines with the Kree Skrull War, and then of course when they bring back Thanos, Silver Surfer became way more, I think, than a one-dimensional character that I thought he was prior to this, and even now I kind of think he's back to that kind of one-dimensional type character. I thought this run that he had in the late 80s, in the early 90s, was the best Silver Surfer because, I kind of liked him as a character.
This is a wordy book. It's a wordy book.
Yeah.
But it's Englehart, so you get that right. Yeah, and I'm not a huge cosmic fan, whether it be Marvel, DC, whatever. But I've got to say, much like you on Catwoman, I was like, okay, what's going on? Who's that? And who's this? And worked it out. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. Absolutely could not care less about the clumsy storyline.
Clumsy foul up.
Yeah, I'm like, what? What's this all about?
He ends up leading the Kree Empire.
Whatever. At which point, we get to this part, and it's like a whole different book. And this is, I always think, this is the Silver Surfer I would like to see more of. That questioning Silver Surfer. He's not using the power cosmic. He's not firing rays out of his eyes or doing whatever he needs to do. He's having a conversation. And I think that's so interesting when you read like a comic book, rather than just being all like fight, fight, fight. In fact, there's very little fighting in this whole book, considering it's a conclusion of a war. Not a lot of people die in this conclusion. This must be like the most peaceful war in the world.
No, there were a lot of depths in the previous couple of parts, but this last part was kind of like the wrap up. So.
Okay, cool. I mean, obviously he's getting a little bit angry there. He's getting ready to open up some power cosmic on Mr. Miracle's ass, but no. As you said, the living tribunal comes in. I think you have to be smoking to get some of this. I was like, what? I have no idea. But then when he said, "Oh, would you like some of the Godhood?" I was like, I didn't realize it was that sort of party. What's going on here? Whew, that's the chat line I'm going to use later. Where's Mrs. H?
No, I thought it was an interesting little segue. I thought it was cool, and that's how the book ends, right? That book ends with kind of like him just having that revelation and just flying off into the spaceways. So, I think it's a really solid book, and I can see why people look forward to it. This is the under the radar book that people like X-Men fans would be like chew the hands off to read, but then they're not because they're too busy like with mutants and whatever. I think very much it's funny because we just be looking at a mature book. I think probably this book should have a mature label just because it talks about so many different things. It's a hard sit down read in 20 minutes for sure. It's very philosophical, I think.
Yeah, and I think that's what makes the Surfer for me fun. Is that I want to see him be the fulcrum between the two opposing ideals. Yeah, I don't want him to be all like, "Look at me, I'm powerful. I'm going to just step in." So and this is that as you say, he's between the Skrulls and the Krees. So that's cool.
Yep, and I thought Ron Lim drew Silver Surfer better than anybody, just because he drew him like he was a mirror, like shiny, reflective. You never saw Kirby draw him like that. He looked kind of flat. Even Buscema, he always just kind of like not. He looked more white than silver. So
it's like a white hot chocolate.
Yes. Okay.
Hey, I'm just saying because I that's why I had one of those earlier today, and let me tell you, it was not very nice. Okay, that's cool. Right, last book. We're not gonna go with the color copies of this book because there's like 5 of them, and some of the colors are horrific. But the main hook for this book is it's Batman: Legends of the Dark Knight #1. All right, and the hook on this particular book was the first new Batman #1 since 1940. Nowadays, you see me get like a new Batman #1 every other month, but back then it was a big deal. All right, so I think what followed this was Shadow of the Bat for a while. Again, has that DC, I think, maturity level ramped up a little bit. Written by Denny O'Neil, Ed Brannigan is on art, John Beatty's on inks, John Constanza is on letters, DC's version of Tom Wachowski, Cozy Richmond Lewis. This book isn't an expensive book. You can get this on eBay around £3. Go collect. Right, go collect. I don't know where they get their prices from. But whoever's selling this at 9.6 for $130, well done, sir. Well done indeed.
Which cover? Because this was the first DC book, I think, that had multiple covers available.
Which one? I used to have the pink one. I have the pink one, I think.
I bought every color cover, so I have probably like 6 copies of this book.
Here's an interesting fact, though. 9.6 is $130. You drop down to a grade 8, which is still pretty good, to be honest, a grade 8. drops out at $24. That's a huge price drop.
That is.
So I
Especially
guess,
for the amount of books walking around. And I mean, this is 1989. They probably
yeah.
printed a couple of million of these.
Maybe not. Maybe not. So this is yet another sort of reimaging of Batman. Well, not really reimaged. Do you remember this book where it came out? It's based on that year one continuity. It's kind of like filling in the gaps, isn't it, between how Batman got from year one to being the bat god of DC Universe as he probably still is, to be honest. I love this. I love the first 4 stories in this whole run. The idea is you get a rotating cast of creators. Each story lasts around 5 issues long, and you're talking. It's like a Devil's Roar, isn't it? You've got this team, then you've got Grant Morrison and Klaus Janson on Gothic, which still scares me now. You've got Denny O'Neil back on Venom. You've got Paul Galausi and Doug Munch on Prey. You know, you're talking. This is like a heavy hitters. You know, it's murderous roar of comic book creators all talk about early Batman, and I think it's absolutely great. This story, it's a bit of a slow burner. Essentially, he's using his tracking skills that he's trying to learn off this bloke, and he falls afoul of the murderer that they're looking for. The murderer ends up falling into the ravine with his stuff, with Bruce Wayne's things. Bruce Wayne gets saved by some local natives, and they hear the story about the Raven and the Bat. And then from there on in, he returns back to Gotham. We get some more year one shenanigans before he does the whole "I shall become a Bat" thing, and then that's what pretty much issue number 1. Later on, we do find out there's something shady going on with North Alaskan Indians, and there is a clue in this book as to what's going on. Overall, I thought, as an issue number 1, I thought it was quite slow. But bearing in mind, back then you're used to reading Batman Detective, which is like proper, like just gung-ho stuff. So I like this change of pace. And Legends became my must-go-to book. I'd read this over everything. So there you go. What were your thoughts on Legends?
So this is one of the rare DC books that we talk about that I actually read when it came out in 1989. I was collecting this book, but I remember not being overly impressed with the first issue.
Okay.
And so this actually never became it never became my go-to Batman book, simply because I mean, I wasn't as educated on Batman at the time. So like, I didn't know Denny O'Neil from A Hole in the Wall. Didn't really know Ed Brannigan. Even the second arc, Grant Morrison was a stranger to me at that time. So, you know, I didn't know what to expect. Didn't really know. I had read Batman Year One, but, you know, I didn't really pick up on the fact that this was supposed to be alongside Batman Year One. And I was like, how come everything happened, you know, everything that's going on, it's not related to anything else going on in the Batman universe? It was like almost out of continuity. So, you know, at the time I could take it or leave it. Now, going back and rereading this book, you know, you find a new appreciation, as I often do when we go revisit stuff that I haven't looked at in over 30 years. You find a new appreciation for the story beats, for writers that, you know, maybe you didn't like at the time. Definitely artists. You know, I find more appreciation now for some of the artists running around. But Batman had this look to it, and it didn't really matter who was drawing Batman at the time. Could have been anybody, but you know, it's like you can draw Batman, but he's got to look this way. They have to be shadows. They have to be heavy inks. They have to be the colors have to be kind of muted.
Prime example, the page we've got going on.
Right? Yeah, and nothing too bright. You know.
Yeah.
So, you know, at this point in time, I mean, he was definitely the Dark Knight, right? So, um,
Trying to
you know,
become, definitely.
yeah, more black and grays, not so much
Mm-hmm.
the bright blues and the big yellow shields and stuff like that.
Oh, I miss the
They got
bright
rid of.
blues.
Yep. So,
Mm.
but yeah, definitely the heavier theme. But yeah, good stuff. Reading it, I was. I did not do the rest of this storyline like I did the Catwoman,
Uh-huh.
but yeah, I was like, okay, this is the way they're going. And
Yeah.
of course, now Denny O'Neil, come on,
Yeah.
classic Batman writer.
Yeah.
But you can see how he's actually back into the more heavy mature theme where
Mm.
he was writing Batman like what pre-crisis and stuff, and he's like,
Yeah. Yeah.
he's like, okay, let's go this way. It's cool.
It's
Cool with me.
so for me, I mean, I love this. I agree with you. Issue 1 is probably not a standout issue. I'll give you
Mhm.
that. I will give you that. But when this came out, the world was gripped with Batman fever because of the movie, right?
Of course, yeah.
So, I mean, I was buying everything left, right, and center. And I put off buying year 1 because I didn't like, the handwritten diary entries.
Yep.
I just like, I can't be bothered reading that. That's just awful. I just want. And eventually, I got around to buying year 1. I was like, "Whoa, that's brilliant!" And then I started buying like all these. Titan Comics used to do a collection of black and white comics. So I bought a whole raft of Daniel O'Neil, Neil Adams stuff
Hmm.
that was in in this black and white format. And I did a little bit of research and found out who Daniel O'Neil was. So when I heard that this book was coming out, I was like, this is going to be the bomb. This is going to be brilliant. First issue, I liked it. I thought it was great. I loved the idea. But it wasn't until Gothic where things started to get a little bit freaky. Then the gorgeous art of Paul Galausi, as I mentioned. And then, of course, Daniel O'Neil pulls out all the stops with Venom, which is the introduction of the drug that Bane uses. And you think, whoa, that's kind of for me where this whole thing leads. I think from this little acorn, such a fantastic book came out. Did it lose its shine after a while? Yes, it did. Yes, it did. Especially when it got pulled into the whole Night's End malarkey, because this book was supposed to be out of continuity. So then there was no reason why we should have a current storyline in these pages. But there is another impact that we need to consider about this book that we haven't talked about. Out of continuity, 5 issues. That does not sound a lot like a Spider-Man book by a certain Mr. McFarlane.
Which book was that?
The Spider-Man book.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that was the idea. Remember that first issue with where he was fighting the lizard? And then
Torment.
Yeah. That's supposed to be like this. This uses that format, albeit not a rotating cast, but stories are 5 issues long, out of the continuity, doesn't have to tie into anything else. So, how successful was Legends of the Dark Knight? Well, it started a whole new trend.
There's a sign of things to come. Everything's written for the trade now. This is like you could go find this is a trade. You could find Gothic as a trade. It's a 5 issue. You go pay $10 at the store for it. So
I think my wife has. I think I own both the Paul Galausi ones, which has Professor Hugo Strange. I think I have Venom. No, I have Venom in comic book form, and I have this and Gothic in comic book form. So there you go. Cool.
Oh, there you
go.
It launched the trade trend.
Yeah. Oh well. Thank you for putting a cloud on my silver lining there. Thanks, man.
Hey, well, everything's 5 parts now. 5
or 6, definitely.
Yeah, 5 or 6 chapters, and then on to the next. And hey, most of them are out of continuity.
I find that I think whilst Marvel and DC do that for the trades, I also think indie books do it quite well as well. To be honest, the Dark Horse model, I call it.
Yeah.
It's right, instead of having an ongoing series, they'll do a 5-issue run, wait a year, and then do another 5-issue run just to get people still caught up on the thing. So, hey, but what do I know? This is a view from the cheap seats, right?
Hey,
Cool.
we're just fans.
We
gentlemen.
are just fans. We are just fans. Not just about it. We are the fans. So there you go. That's how that works. All right, there you go. That's it for this show. You want us to reach out to us? Check it out. There's our Twitters. You can get the old Old-Timers Comic Book Show. 13th there. Professor's there. I'm there. Just drop us a tweet. Let us know if there's any particular years or teams you would like us to talk about.
Yay.
Because we have to we scratch our heads sometimes and we're like, what should we do this time? Cool.
Hey.
As I'm going on holiday soon on vacation, I was thinking maybe we should do superheroes on vacation.
Oh, okay.
But I don't know if I can think of anybody that went on vacation that much. Probably the X-Men at some point. But,
Sure. There's an episode of Captain America where he goes away and he gets super sunburned and they paint him like red the entire time. I'll have to do some research and find out where that is.
You could have the X-Men one where Scott goes to Alaska and bumps into Madeline Pryor.
Oh yeah, good.
I don't know.
I like that storyline because that was the storyline where there was the Grand Director on Captain America. That was the copy, the Steve Rogers clone, and that was how Sharon Carter figured out that which Steve Rogers was which because Steve had a sunburn from their vacation.
All in the comic books.
Yep.
All in the comic books. All right.
The 4 color wonders.
There we go. And who says they all have to be movies? All right. Okay. So there you are. 4 up, 4 down. Hope you enjoyed it. I had a blast. 1989. What a great year. Professor, thank you so much for spending the time.
Oh, thank you, Johnny.
I've been your host, Johnny Machine Hughes. Don't forget to check out UCPN for all your favorite shows, including Professor.
No Prize Podcast, where we talk MCU, Disney Plus, and we managed to squeeze in some comics.
All before the 2-minute warning. And and of course, don't forget MPP Sister Show TDC, the Definitive Crusade, for all you DC diehards out there. Excellent. Okay. That's it. We're done. As always.
Hey.
Adios.